can I have a petite female
Sure.
who would volunteer to come and see how that 5-to-1 works for you?
I'll try.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
As you pull, you want to have a lead so it's going to lock in. So just make sure you're not standing at an angle where when you pull on it, it's going to come unlocked and drop in.
Right.
Okay.
Bruce.
Your sword.
You proved it. You proved it.
I feel like I'm jumping the man on a TV-52. Woof.
No.
It's getting hard.
So so this is what we're testing right now. So do it if you can. If you can't, say I can't. But
Okay.
we're just going to make a choice right now.
This is going to take a long time.
You have a lot of grit, but this is suboptimal.
It is. Yeah, so we're going to do the halyard, okay? He's going to have to lead the halyard.
Outside the
I would lead it all the way outside the Lazy Jacks, yeah. One of the common misconceptions is, I'm going to fall out of the life sling. Notice when that life sling comes tight, he's not falling out of it.
Right.
So that's one of the concerns people have. So unlike a life ring, where somebody would literally have to have the strength to hold on the life ring, this life sling closes around him. Okay, so whenever you're ready,
We're going to go up, so the halyard would just go from there to the life sling, right?
and so, again, the rule of thumb is about 2 people high off the dock. In fact, with a 5-to-1, we may have to make adjustments. Let's start with about 2 people height off the dock, so about 10 or 12 feet.
So Margaret, this is where I would not want that because I can't. I'm not going to be able to easily
That-
clip
exactly.
that.
So
So we
that's-
don't want a clip on this if you're going to go that high.
So that's one of the challenges of that locking cleat on the Caribbean.
This is why we went to the other.
Yeah, you can do it, but getting the right angle to loosen it is tough. 5-to-1 human. Yeah, that shoulder I'm sure is not happy about that.
God, this is at least some gravity here.
So Steve's not going anywhere. I've agreed with that life sling. He's not going to fall out of it.
I really appreciate the difference.
So that looks like a pretty good height, right? Because he's going to come.
Yeah.
He's going to get his center of gravity in the boat before he tube locks.
Yeah.
Yay!
Hard with a heavy weight.
Wow. And now he'd be happy if you'd lower him down.
He would be.
So a thing you might want to think about on your boats is if you're going to use that block and tackle, if you go back to that halyard, and you know what racers do, how we mark our lines to show where the line should be at certain situations, you might want to take a Sharpie and mark on the Sharpie with a black line or a red line that shows this is where that halyard needs to be when the halyard is hoisted high enough for that block and tackle to be the right height. If you're using the main halyard, one of the challenges that you have is the main halyard winch is usually smaller than your jib winch. The jib winch is called the primary winch because it's usually your beefiest one on deck. So the question for each boat is, can you lead the halyard to a primary winch? You've got to have to ask the question, are you going to have a fair lead? And that's going to vary from boat to boat. So from this boat, can you lead the halyard to a primary winch? Halyards are almost always too short to go to the water. So if you're using that as your strategy of I'm going to take my halyard down and attach it to somebody, it usually won't work. Another reason to use a life sling. So you're going to go right through that loop. Okay. Make sure that's attached. Okay. Okay. So now we've got the halyard rigged, and we're making sure that it's lead fair, and so it's coming back to the primary winch. Okay. We're able to lead the main halyard to the primary winch, but who can tell me what's problem is going to happen right now? You don't have a fair lead. It's gonna get an override. I am much more optimistic that she's going to get an override than she's going to be able to hoist him.
If she manually doesn't use the self-tailing and tries to tail it with only 2 wraps, she may be able to avoid an overwrap.
I would have preferred Steve. I am saving you, Ron.
Non, mais vraiment, mets-toi par-dessus avec les deux bras, ça ira mieux.
We got you halfway out, Ron.
Thank you, thank you.
From Catalina that way.
I'm losing sensation in my toes in the cold water. Faster! Faster!
Is he still alive?
This is the worst case scenario.
Yes.
Well, the good news is she doesn't yet have an override, and I'm a bit surprised.
Because
So-
I'm undoing it each time I go. I get more. Each time I get more sheet.
No, my
I'm-
point is you don't have an override here, which is where I was expecting the
because
override.
it's sliding.
Yeah.
Yeah. You owe me a bottle of champagne, Ron.
One of the pieces of information you want to gather is the size of the winches that are being used.
Oh, yeah.
That's a size 54, because that's going to make a difference.
I'm definitely feeling it.
I hope you can keep your shoes on.
Spin her around, spin her around.
While I had my entire body supported under my arm span, and as I sat down, I noticed I was slightly lightheaded. And
I'll bet
so-
Francesca was when she was done as well. What do you recognize about this shackle? It comes undone. Anybody who's raced any amount of time has had this type of shackle come undone with the sail up and just had their crewmates hate them. So it's not a bad idea if you do have an option for something less likely to come undone than these type of shackles to secure it. So yeah, that's a good idea. So this is another, if you hang on to that, this block and tackle also has the cam cleat there, and we're hoisting it straight up. Hopefully that's, so we're gonna have the same issue of being able to free the person. So you'll have to get to the right angle to lower them back down. With your splicing skills, if you're gonna do this, this really shouldn't even be, I wouldn't even do a bowline. That really needs to be a splice there, right? If you're talking about somebody's life depending on that, there should be a good high quality splice. Somebody knows how to splice double braid in there. Spinnaker halyards are attached above the forestay. Right now, that's coming out, he says it's coming out of the starboard side, so it's coming underneath the forestay, so it's gonna wanna bind up. He's gonna have to flip it around the forestay to this side. Attach it to the upper lifelines for now. So what I'm talking about is you're gonna clip it right there. Okay, so that's where you start. Now you hoist the halyard up, and that's what you do, and you're getting to the 10 to 12 feet high. Okay. The victim is going to want to hang right underneath the halyard anyway, so if he was sitting in the water, as that line comes tight, it's going to want to draw him right underneath the halyard, which will be a better lead for it. So again, you might want to mark that point, right? Because that was pretty much the right height. That locking cam cleat at the top. Good news is you can pull it with your weight and lock it in. The bad news is when it's time to lead them down, you're probably going to have to go to the halyard. Okay, rescuer, do you want to go down and ease the halyard down then?
Yeah, that looks like they have been.
Hand on the wraps there. And we'll keep our victim safe as he gets. Thank you to all our victims. So what we're going to do with this one, everybody, is we're going to use a 3-to-1 block and tackle, led to a winch. Okay? He's going to take the lower shackle and he's going to attach it here to the upper lifeline. Okay? So again, she's tied to the boat, she's not going anywhere. So first of all, make sure your halyard is completely clear, free to run. This halyard shackle, and racers have, know that every once in a while that will open up when you don't expect it to. Racers actually will typically have some tape on board, right, to tape that shut. And then I think you're probably gonna have to twist that around once to have it, yeah, that looks better. Now you can reattach it. Yes, and then you're gonna go back to the halyard and you're gonna raise it 2 people high. So what I would suggest you do before you do that snatch block, try moving that jib car all the way forward and pull the jib sheet out and see if that gives you a good lead. Move this one forward. And again, the key thing is, while all this is going on, he's hoisted her as high as he can out of the water and he's tied her off somewhere.
But Margaret, shouldn't that be from the inside of the shrouds?
Your victim is raising a point there. As it starts to raise, you might check to see if you're, tell you what, let's see how this goes. And one thing to think about on your boats, you might have some shorter winch handles and you might have some longer winch handles. You know, if you make a mental note, if you have a boat that has longer winch handles somewhere, now's the time for a longer winch handle for more mechanical advantage. So now in a controlled manner, you're going to ease her down. Take the winch handle out, put one hand on the wraps, there you go, and just lower her down. Good.
It felt like I was in pain. If it's up here, it's in pain. Maybe it's less painful if you are leaning on your back when you raise, because if you go all the way here, it feels like everything, your shoulder is pushing against your neck. It hurts.
Okay.
To me, it hurts.
Let me just point out that there are some people who talk about doing this rescue with just a line, saying, I don't need a life sling. I would tie a rope around the person. I'd tie a bowline around them. Let me just extrapolate. People are talking about being uncomfortable with this foam collar around them. Imagine how uncomfortable they would be with a rope around them. Let's say you're going out with new crew. What 4 things do you want to tell them in case you go overboard? So, number 1, how to operate the VHF radio. The whole process in terms of, do they need to switch a panel on a breaker on the main panel? How do they turn on the VHF radio? How do they get to channel 16? And there should be a button, right? A dedicated red button that would go to channel 16. Many of your radios are going to have a DSC button. An emergency button, show them how to lift the cover for that, tell them how long they have to push that button. The next thing is your and how to put out a call, how to get on channel 16. Frankly, if I have non-boaters on board the boat, I don't worry too much about teaching them the whole protocol for Mayday. I say, push the button, say what's happening, let go of the button. So it's like, push the button, help, my skipper fell overboard, release the button, and that there will be a friendly professional voice that will come over the radio and start asking you questions. Second thing, one of the first questions they're going to ask you is, where are you? So the second thing you want to teach your crew is how to find your location. So a lot of modern VHF radios actually have a GPS chip built into them, and they might be able to read your latitude and longitude right off of that VHF radio. If they don't, there might be a chart plotter on board, and so how to find their location, ideally latitude and longitude. Some people may have that information on their phone, on like a Navionics app. The next thing I would teach them, depending on the boat, is how to take control of the boat. So for example, do you have any boats that have, I know you have boats that have auto helms, right?
Yeah.
So if the auto helm is engaged, how to disengage the auto helm. You may laugh, there was a couple crossing the Atlantic a number of years ago, husband and wife, and the husband went overboard. The wife didn't know how to disengage the auto helm. Wow. And she was rescued some days later. They diverted a freighter to her, but her husband was never found. So how to turn off the autopilot, how to start the engine if necessary, how to stop the engine if necessary. And then the 4th thing is how to use that life sling. Again, because if they're beginners, I would prefer they not even try to bring the boat alongside me. I want to be rescued, but I would be happier to be rescued if they could pull the life sling to me. And the nice thing about the life sling is the basic concept is easy enough to understand, that if the people know how to disengage the autopilot, start the engine, drive in a circle, throw that life sling around, and pull it to me, and then once I have contact with that life sling, they know how to stop the engine, bring the sails down ideally, show them how to open the halyard, and then pull me to the stern of the boat and put out that Mayday call.
Cell phone can save a lot of lives. Take out your cell phone and dial 911.
I agree with Steve. VHF and your cell phone. Call 911. In part for a location like this, the 911 system is connected to the Harbor Patrol, the fireboat, and so it can be a good source of information. And the advantage of that too is if you have multiple people on the boat, somebody can be calling 911 who might not know how to do all the other things.